Hi class, so today we will be taking a look at what fiction is versus nonfiction. I know we've been kind of confused with the two of them, so we'll look at words to describe what fiction are, we'll look at words to describe what nonfiction are. We'll also be taking a look at what books would fall under the fiction category and what books would fall under nonfiction. We'll also look at a passage about elephants to define and identify what the main idea of the passage is, along with identifying if the passage we're reading is fiction or nonfiction. So to begin with, you have all received a T-chart, and we'll do fiction on one side and nonfiction on the other. And to begin the lesson, we'll go ahead and start with fiction. So what are some words that we can think of that define what fiction is? So to begin with, we know that fiction is not real or true events. So we can look at a word like imaginary. So let's go ahead and write imaginary on our T-chart. Another thing we could think about is, could something like the book is describing happen? Is it possible, or would impossible be a better word to describe fiction? So we know that fiction, again, is fake or not real, so we could put fake and impossible. Okay, another thing we could think about is like characters. Are they magical? Are they mysterious? Are they talking animals? So those are other things we could put on there just to help us remember that fiction, we know animals can't really talk. So let's go ahead and put that, talking animals. Magical powers. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at nonfiction. So we know that nonfiction is true, right? So that could be our first word, is true, on our T-chart. Another part of our nonfiction is we could do realistic, right? Because that we know is another word or vocabulary word to describe something that's real. Another thing we could do is possible, because we did impossible for fiction, we could do possible for nonfiction. We know that they could follow a certain event in history, they could be real life experiences, characters that are real. So those are some other things. You'd pick what you feel would fit best on your T-chart and something that you can look back at and be like, oh yeah, that's nonfiction. Okay, so as of right now, our T-chart should look a little something like this. We've got our fiction on one side with our imaginary, fake, impossible, talking animals, magical. Nonfiction, we have true, realistic, possible, and real people. So our next part of this T-chart that I'd like to add on would be to identify like what type of books we may see or read that will be classified as fiction or nonfiction. So fiction, we know that we could read novels, picture books, plays, poetry. So let's go ahead and write on our T-chart underneath our vocabulary words that help us define what kind of books we would see. So I'm just going to draw a line to write, and I'll go ahead and write novels, plays, we could do picture books, and then poetry could be one. So just to kind of reference, this is what I did just to kind of show you what books we could potentially see a fiction book that would be categorized. And then to go ahead and continue that with like nonfiction, what would we see as a nonfiction book? So we could see like autobiographies, obviously textbooks, right? Because they kind of tell us about certain events or about certain things in history that have occurred. Another thing would be like research papers. And our last one that we could put on there would be like memoirs. Okay. So this is, again, just going to be a great little reference for you to keep in your accordion folder. And you can kind of reference this when you're like, what is fiction? I kind of am a little confused. Or what is nonfiction? They both have similar sounds, so they both have fiction with them. Sorry. So that being said, it's important to realize and recognize what we're reading. Okay, so our next little thing, I'm going to read you a passage, and we will have to identify if this passage is, to begin with, is it fiction, nonfiction, and then let's go ahead and identify what the main idea is, because these are things and skills that we will continue to use for the rest of our lives when we're going through books and we're reading them and trying to figure out what the meaning is behind everything. It's important to be able to establish if it's a fiction and nonfiction book, along with what the main idea is. So, the passage I am going to read to you is, elephants are the largest living land mammals. The Asian elephant, also known as the Indian elephant, can weigh up to 11,000 pounds. The African elephant is even bigger, weighing as much as 20,000 pounds. The elephant's gestation period is 22 months, the longest of any mammal. Because baby elephants weigh on average of 260 pounds at birth, the largest elephant ever measured was 13 feet tall and weighed 24,000 pounds. Okay, so let's first identify, is this fiction or nonfiction? We know that it's talking about an animal and it's talking about facts, so we could kind of narrow it down and we know that it's nonfiction. Our main idea, what would our main idea be of the passage? So we would know that we're talking about an animal. So they were also talking about weight and size. So we could probably narrow it down to identify that they're trying to discuss and let us know that elephants are the largest mammal on land. The last thing I just kind of want to do to wrap up this is to let you know that sometimes we will get confused as we continue to learn, but having tools and resources such as a T-chart is such a great tool and resource to go back on. We're giving you these resources for a reason, so utilize them. If you're confused, be like, oh yeah, I remember Miss Courtney gave me this awesome tool that will allow me to identify if I'm reading a fiction book or a nonfiction book, or if the passage is fiction versus nonfiction. Thanks, guys. Hope you have a good day.